6 years of marriage, not perfect. But I thought, at the very least, it was real. Until that night. She stepped out of the bedroom. A tight dress I'd never seen before. Provocative, unexpected. A heavy scent of perfume, not the one I knew. "Just a client meeting," she said. It was 8:45 p.m. I didn't press, just nodded. But inside, something felt wrong. I grabbed my keys and followed her. And right there, in front of me, was betrayal, staged like a performance, one that had likely played out many times before. If you've ever felt that moment, when your heart breaks but your face stays calm, stay with me. You might recognize your own story in mine. My name's Mark. I'm a civil engineer in Atlanta. I don't party. I don't flirt. I believed in building things that last. Structures, routines, marriages. Jessica and I met in college. She studied marketing. She was sharp, funny, confident. The kind of woman who walked into a room and made it feel warmer. Our early years were simple. We had a modest house in the suburbs, 2 dogs, and a rhythm. Coffee at 6:30, commute by 7, dinner by 7:30. Sundays were for groceries and fixing up the yard. We argued, of course. She wanted more travel. I was focused on saving. She craved spontaneity. I valued structure. But we always circled back, always made it work, or so I thought. Looking back, maybe I mistook routine for stability. Maybe I believed too deeply in the kind of loyalty I was raised on, the kind that said, you don't leave, you work it out. But loyalty only works if you're both playing by the same rules. It started small, a new lipstick shade, longer showers, more time spent getting ready, just to run errands. She started coming home later, said her agency was picking up more after-hours clients. And when I asked how her day went, the answers got shorter, more vague. She was on her phone more, always smiling at something. But when I walked into the room, the screen would dim or flip, a subtle pause, a locked screen, then a look, like I'd interrupted something. At first I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't present enough. Maybe I'd grown dull, predictable. I even started planning a weekend getaway to reconnect, but it gnawed at me. That quiet voice you try to shut down, the one that whispers, something's off. Still, I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Trust her, I thought. You're just being paranoid. But deep down, I knew better. Men like me don't like to admit when something's slipping, especially not the woman we swore our life to. That night is burned into my memory. She came out of the bedroom, and for a moment I didn't recognize her. A black dress, tight, low cut, something she wouldn't even wear to a holiday party. Heels I hadn't seen before. Earrings that shimmered in the hallway light, and that perfume, strong, unfamiliar, sweet but sharp. I looked up from the couch. "Where are you headed?" She didn't blink, didn't pause. "Client dinner, last-minute meeting, don't wait up." 8:45 at night. A pause hung between us, just a second too long. She grabbed her clutch, smiled faintly, and walked out the door. I sat there in silence, the TV still on, but I couldn't hear a word. My mind spun. I stared at that door like it owed me answers. Then something in me shifted. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and followed her. Not out of anger, out of the quiet need for truth. Whatever that truth was, I needed to see it with my own eyes. I waited a full 5 minutes before pulling out of the driveway. Didn't want to be obvious. Didn't want to believe I was really doing this. Her taillights were still faint up ahead. I kept a safe distance, headlights off, heart pounding harder with every block. She drove across town, not toward her agency, not toward any place that screamed business. Instead, she pulled into the valet circle of a rooftop bar, the Garden Lounge. Trendy, upscale. Not exactly where you seal marketing deals. I parked across the street and stayed in the car, low in the seat. Then I saw him. Tall, well-groomed, confident. He greeted her with a smile too wide, hands too familiar. He touched her arm like he'd done it before. She laughed, the kind of laugh that hurt to hear, because I hadn't heard it in weeks. They stood there for a moment, like a scene rehearsed, no hesitation, no discomfort. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't a meeting. This was a date. I didn't move. Just sat there, frozen, gripping the steering wheel like it could anchor me. They stood near the entrance, close, too close. He leaned in and said something in her ear. She tilted her head back and laughed, touching his chest lightly. I knew that laugh. It used to belong to me. They walked in together. Her hand grazed the small of his back like it had done it 100 times. Not nervous, not hesitant. I stared at the glowing bar sign above them. The Garden Lounge, a place I'd passed a dozen times but never been inside. For a second I thought about walking in, confronting them, letting the truth explode right there, in front of strangers and cocktails. But I didn't. I wasn't ready to be the angry husband. I wasn't even sure I believed what I was seeing, because believing it would make it real. So I waited, and I watched, like a ghost in my own life. I reached for my phone, hands trembling, not to text her, not to call a friend, just the camera. I zoomed in through the windshield, framing them as they laughed at the bar's entrance, snapped a few shots, blurry, but enough to show the way he touched her, the way she didn't pull away. They disappeared inside. I stayed parked in that dark corner, engine off, phone in my lap. The photos stared back at me, cold and undeniable. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 50. I imagined them at a table, close together, her smiling, him reaching across the linen for her hand. I imagined her forgetting me completely, like I was nothing more than a name on a mailbox. But I needed more than imagination. I needed certainty, because the moment you confront a lie, you better be holding the truth in your hands. So I waited, not just for her to come out, but for the last thread of denial inside me to finally snap. After nearly an hour, they came back out, laughing, carefree, like teenagers sneaking out after curfew. He held the door open. She stepped out first, no guilt, no looking over her shoulder. They walked like this wasn't their first time, like there was no one in the world they were hiding from. They got into his car, a sleek black sedan. I started mine and followed, 2 cars behind, headlights dimmed. I didn't even know what I was doing anymore, just driving on autopilot. Each red light felt like a countdown to something I didn't want to see. They didn't go far, just 10 blocks. Then they pulled into a quiet side street and stopped in front of the Granville Hotel. Small, expensive, discreet, the kind of place you don't accidentally walk into with someone who isn't your spouse. They went inside, no hesitation, no nerves. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. The truth was already sitting in the pit of my stomach, and it hurt more than I thought it would. I sat there for a moment after they disappeared into the hotel, just breathing, not crying, not shouting, just frozen. I stared at the front entrance, half expecting her to turn around, to come back, to realize what she was doing. But she didn't, so I shifted into drive and left. The streets felt empty, like the city had gone quiet just for me. Streetlights flickered past in slow motion. Traffic lights turned green, then red, but I barely noticed. No music, no GPS, just the hum of the tires and the sound of my own breathing. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached. I didn't know what hurt more, that she cheated, or that she lied so easily, and I believed her. When I pulled into our driveway, something had changed. It looked like our house, same windows, same porch light, but it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a set, a backdrop for a life I no longer trusted. I barely slept, laid there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening for the sound of her key in the door. It was past 3 a.m. when I finally heard it. The soft click, footsteps, a purse hitting the kitchen counter. I didn't go downstairs. I couldn't. I just lay there, eyes open, listening to the woman I no longer recognized move through the house like nothing had happened. Morning came fast, too fast. I sat at the kitchen table staring into my coffee when she walked in, freshly showered, wearing a hoodie, hair damp. She smiled and kissed my cheek. "Meeting went great," she said. Just like that, like she hadn't just spent the night with another man. I looked at her and said nothing. She poured herself a cup like it was any other Thursday, but something in me had gone still, not cold, just done. I didn't ask questions, because I already had the answers. Now I needed a plan. She left for work like it was just another morning, kissed me again, same lips that had kissed someone else hours earlier. I sat in that silence for a long time after the door shut. Not sad, not angry, just clear. I opened my laptop, typed in divorce attorneys near me, scrolled past the ads, looking for someone with experience in betrayal cases, someone who could help me end this with dignity, not drama. By noon, I had an appointment. By 1 o'clock, I was in his office, holding my phone out with photos I never wanted to take. He didn't flinch. He'd seen worse. But to me, it was everything. Proof that I wasn't paranoid. That the little voice in my head had been right all along. We talked logistics, property, timing, documentation. It was clinical, precise. But for the first time in weeks, I felt in control. This wasn't revenge. It was reality. And I had finally stopped pretending it wasn't happening. That afternoon, I went home and opened a new folder on my computer. Named it something cold and simple. Jessica, evidence. I transferred the photos from my phone, cropped them, labeled them by time and location, screenshotted our text conversation from that night, where she said she was heading into the client dinner now. She had lied so easily, so confidently. I searched the bank statements, found charges to the hotel from nights she claimed she was working late, Lyft rides that started nowhere near her office. And then I remembered something. Our shared calendar. She'd gotten lazy, or maybe too comfortable. One event marked, client meeting Derek. Derek. So he had a name now. I printed it all, every photo, every timestamp, every transaction, put it in a manila folder, slid it into the drawer of my nightstand. I wasn't going to scream, wasn't going to throw things or beg for explanations. When the time came, I would lay it all in front of her and watch the lie collapse. That night, I sat across from her at dinner. She talked about her day like nothing had shifted. Chicken needed more salt. Her boss was annoying. Netflix suggestions were getting worse. I nodded, smiled, played the part. But inside, everything was lining up. I knew the when. I knew the how. Now I just had to choose the where. It couldn't be in public. I didn't want a scene. And it couldn't be at night. I needed her sober, alert, cornered by the truth. So I waited until Saturday. Mid-morning, sunlight pouring into the kitchen, no distractions, no excuses. I told her, "We need to talk." She looked up, confused, but not scared. Not yet. I led her into the living room, sat down, took out the folder, laid it gently on the table between us. No yelling, no accusations, just stillness. She reached for it with shaking hands, and in that silence, before she said a word, I already knew. She wasn't going to lie her way out of this. She opened the folder slowly, one photo, then another, receipts, dates, screenshots. Her hands trembled. I said nothing, just watched her face shift, from confusion to realization to fear. At first she denied it, said it wasn't what it looked like, that Derek was just a client, that the hotel was a networking event. I didn't respond, didn't argue. I simply asked, "Why lie then?" She blinked, speechless. That moment when the story collapses in on itself. Then came the tears, real or rehearsed. I couldn't tell anymore. She said it was a mistake, that she felt distant, that I'd been distracted, that she never meant for it to go that far. But it had. It went farther than a mistake. It crossed into betrayal, and betrayal doesn't get undone with apologies. She reached for my hand. I didn't move. I let the space between us speak for me, because by then, words didn't matter. Truth had already done its job. She broke, right there on the couch, tears streaming, voice cracking. "I messed up," she kept saying, over and over, like repetition would soften the truth. "I was lonely. I didn't know how to talk to you. It didn't mean anything, but it did. It meant everything. It meant the foundation we built had rotted quietly beneath us. It meant every 'I love you,' she said, while texting him was just a well-rehearsed line. I sat there, still, not angry, just empty. She begged, said she'd end it, said she'd block his number, go to therapy, earn my trust back. But some things, once shattered, don't come back in the same shape. She kept reaching for me, physically, emotionally. But I stayed still, because silence, in that moment, was louder than any words I could have screamed. And maybe she knew. Maybe she felt it. That quiet between us wasn't hesitation. It was goodbye, waiting to be spoken. I waited until her sobs faded into silence, until the air between us felt too thick to breathe. Then I stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, not for her, for me, because I needed something steady to hold. She followed me in, her voice cracking. "Please, Mark, don't do this. Don't throw it all away." I turned to her, looked her straight in the eye. "I'm not the one who threw it away." She froze, and I saw it, that flicker of recognition. That split second when she knew it was already over. "I'm filing for divorce," I said. No emotion, no performance, just truth. She fell into a chair, hands covering her face. I didn't comfort her. I couldn't, because she wasn't my person anymore. She had given that role to someone else. And in that kitchen, where we once planned our future, I ended it. Not with rage, not with revenge, but with the kind of finality that only betrayal can earn. She moved out 5 days later. No screaming, no scenes, just cardboard boxes and silent footsteps. She packed quietly, like a guest checking out of a hotel. A few clothes, some books, her skincare from the bathroom drawer. The framed photo from our wedding disappeared off the nightstand. I didn't ask where it went. Every item she touched felt like it took part of the house with it. I stayed in the kitchen, drinking coffee that didn't taste like anything. The dogs followed her from room to room, confused. I wanted to explain it to them. Hell, I wanted to explain it to myself. She paused at the front door, keys in hand. Her eyes were red, swollen. She opened her mouth to say something, but I shook my head. Not today, not anymore. She walked out, and for the first time in weeks, the door didn't feel like it was closing on me. It felt like it was closing for me. The house was too quiet. No heels clicking down the hallway. No perfume lingering in the air. No second toothbrush by the sink. At first, it felt like a morgue, like something had died, but no one came to bury it. I left her side of the closet empty, didn't move my clothes over, didn't fill the space. Some nights, I'd stand in the doorway of our old bedroom, half expecting to hear her humming while she folded laundry, but there was only stillness. And strangely, that stillness became comforting. I started doing things for myself again, cooking without asking what she wanted, watching the shows I liked, no compromise, letting the silence stretch, not to punish, but to heal. I stopped checking my phone for texts that weren't coming, stopped wondering what she was doing, where she was sleeping, who she was with, because the truth was, she wasn't my concern anymore. This house, this space, was mine now, and for the first time, that felt like something worth rebuilding. Healing didn't come in waves. It came in moments, small, quiet victories. The first night I slept without waking up in a panic. The first Sunday I spent alone without feeling like the house was mocking me. The first laugh that didn't feel guilty. I started walking more. No destination, just movement. Something about the rhythm of my own footsteps on pavement reminded me I was still here. I stopped saying we, started saying I. I bought a new coffee table. I painted the guest room. I'm doing fine. And with every sentence, I started sounding more like someone I hadn't heard in years. Not the man I was with her, but the man I was before her. And better. Because pain, when faced head-on, does something strange. It carves you out, sharpens the edges, but it also shows you what you're really made of. And I realized I didn't need her to feel whole. I just needed the truth. Even when it hurt. It's strange how betrayal doesn't explode. It seeps in, slowly, quietly, until one day, the person sleeping beside you feels like a stranger in your own bed. But if there's one thing I've learned from this, it's that the truth will always find you. And when it does, you can either fight it or face it. I faced it. And in doing so, I found peace. Not instantly, not perfectly, but piece by piece, I started putting myself back together. Some scars still itch when it rains. Certain songs still sting, but none of it controls me anymore. Because I made a choice to stop begging for loyalty from someone who gave me their back. And if you're listening to this, sitting in your own silence, wondering if it's all in your head, let me say it clearly. Trust your gut. Protect your peace. And if you need to walk away, walk without apology. If you've ever been here, share your story. You never know who needs to hear it.